I would like to call to order the March 2nd, 2022 Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. The Palm Beach TPA is conducting this meeting both in person and virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. Instruction to join the virtual meeting as well as the contact information for assistance are provided in the published meeting agenda. At this time, staff, please call roll so we can establish a quorum.
So as a reminder, when you hit the button on the base and it's red on top, it means you're on and we get you on the recording. And please stay here when I call your name. Ryan Rossi,
Here.
Michael Fitzpatrick,
Here.
Cheryl Snyder is absent, James Garvin,
Here.
Mark Bruner,
Here.
Ramona Bean,
Here.
Paula Ryan, James Bonfiglio,
Here.
Richard Vazzalotti.
Here.
The Port of Palm Beach will be marked as absent, Mark Forrest, Vijay Mishra, Francisco Gill is excused, Myron Uman is excused, Terry Brown, Greg Fagan is excused, Jim Knight.
Here.
The cities of Belglade, Green Acres, Lake Worth Beach, and Riviera Beach will be marked as absent throughout the meeting because there's still vacancies. Albert Richwagon
Here.
and Wen Dang.
Here,
And to know, Madam Chair, for the record, Paula Ryan has joined us in person.
thank you. Okay. Are there any modification to the agenda at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have Albert Richwagon who has joined us remotely and is requesting permission to participate.
Okay, are there any CAC members that has any objection to any members joining us virtually? Okay, seeing none, can you please admit him to?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. At this time, are there, as a reminder, there are 3 ways to provide public comments for this meeting. Written comments may be submitted online or at the website provided in the agenda. Verbal comments may be made virtually by virtual attendees using the raise hand features in the Zoom platform. And of course, verbal and written comments may be provided in person by an in-person attendee submitting comment card available at the welcome table. Are there any general comments at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any member comments at this time? Patrick?
I finished writing my report. I have to change 1 paragraph and a graph. So I'd like to get it on the agenda for next meeting.
We can consider that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Are there any other members of virtually? Richard?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, if you press the button so you can be.
Good, thank you. Last Friday on North Lake Boulevard, there was a horrific vehicle crash on North Lake right at the entrance to Ibis. A crash so awful that it's definitely going to change a family's life forever. I wish that person and the people involved prayers and well wishes and hopefully a recovery, but it was a terrible, terrible crash. The result from that crash, as far as traffic is concerned, and I bring this up because you guys are going to hear me talk about this, and I don't know how familiar the rest of the CAC is on this, is the State Road 7 extension. And the people of the acreage and Royal Palm and communities from west who travel that way were held absolutely hostage because our route out is North Lake Boulevard. People were caught in traffic for over 2 hours where they couldn't even move because the road was shut down. It would have been extremely helpful for many, many thousands of people if this road was open and done. I think, hoping that someday the TPA, CAC we can have a briefing on State Road 7 extension. If you could present some information on it as a, to the rest of the forum here, the people involved with this. So everybody from Boca to Jupiter to Gardens are familiar with what's going on. When there is a meeting about State Road 7 extension, this place becomes a packed house. And it's very vocal. It gets loud in here. And I think it needs to be brought up. I have a ton of information on it. I will speak or debate anybody who wants to talk about this. I have tons of information. I have information that some people probably don't even know about. And I'd be happy to speak about it sometime. I'd like to hear from people from the city of West Palm Beach who oppose State Road 7. And I want them to speak out why. The politicians from West Palm have been the hypocrisy and the corruptness involved with this is awful. The waste of millions and millions of tax dollars is unfair to the city residents. And so everyone needs to know what's going on with the State Road 7 extension. This is a huge project that is long overdue. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Are there any members virtually that would like to have a comment?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, at this time, we're moving to the CAC Liaison Report. Jason?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So the first item on the liaison report is March's Florida Bicycle Month, and the TPA is hosting a bicycle ride on March 11th at 7:45 a.m. And you can get more information at our website at palmbeachtpa.org/walkbike. Also, the state is hosting Florida Love to Ride Challenge throughout the month of March and encourages local agencies to participate. The TPA also signs up and participates throughout the month of March, and their website is lovetoride.net/Florida. The TPA governing board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 17th at 9 a.m. It's both in person and virtually, and you can visit our offices here or log on online and go to palmbeachtpa.org/live to see it virtually. And to get more information about the board, there's palmbeachtpa.org/board. The TPA is also hosting a mobility and economic development panel. And that's going to be on Thursday, March 31st from 10 a.m. to noon, right here in this office. And you can register at tpamobilitypanel.eventbrite.com. Next item is the raise grant notice for a funding opportunity. And this is through the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's about a 1.5 billion in 2022 grant cycle, and RAISE stands for Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. And the applications are due April 14th, 2022. And you can go to the website transportation.gov/raise grant/raise-NOFO. Next is the Safety First Challenge for Safer Streets. This is hosted by the National League of Cities, and they've launched the Safety First Challenge to build a coalition of over 100 cities and towns who want to join the safety movement by taking steps in their communities. And you can get more information here at nlc.org/initiative/Safety First Challenge for Safer Streets. And there's a hyphen in between each one of those words. And lastly, we just concluded our transportation grant cycle for 2022. So we have 3 grants that we offer: the local initiatives, transportation alternatives, and the state road modifications. And you'll see we had a handout at the door when you came in. There's a list of the local initiative grant applications that were applied for, as well as the transportation alternatives. There was no state road modifications, but those were kind of worked out with DOT to incorporate some of the requests that we received from some of the cities that wanted to see some improvements on a few of the state roads. And that concludes the liaison report.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Does any committee members have any comments on this? Paula Ryan, please.
Thank you. I just want to get some clarification because on the RISE grants, right, the federal, that's a US transportation that can go directly to cities for projects that they want to support. I know that Commissioner Weiss has a project in the city of West Palm Beach that has to do with, Parker Avenue and Belvedere. And I know he's been working with the county, but I don't know whether they have put in an application to try to address it, or this might be an opportunity to look at what their goals are with that intersection.
Paula, I believe that you might want to reach out to the city of West Palm Beach. They are putting together a raised grant application, and there are, I believe from my knowledge, that there are a series of neighborhoods that they're providing some level of connectivity. I don't have any knowledge beyond that. I know that they're pursuing a different application itself. That's not that I know of. You might want to reach out to Kevin Volbrecht. He'll have that information for you. Yes. Are there any other members comment on? No? Do we, my question is really on this funding application itself. It's exciting to see the cities that apply, because there's a lot of efforts that goes into these application process. My question is, for example, for the local initiative, you have right now 7 application. Are there sufficient funding to fund all 7 projects, or is there going to be a shortfall?
Well, it's typically about 20 million or 20.2 million annually. So we should be able to accommodate most of it.
Okay.
These are the original application requests for funding. And so when they go through the vetting process, some of these numbers may change in terms of the amount of participating costs versus non-participating costs. So sometimes the numbers either decrease or increase, but I think we're due to get additional money in excess of our 20 million annually. So I'm hoping that if there's more money available, then we'll be able to fully fund these and possibly do more. We'll see.
So last year, I remember that there are projects that we weren't able to fund, that goes on, I guess, a waiting list, if that's a right term for it. Would those be considered, I guess, above these applications, or? Okay.
Yeah, so in the next couple of months, we'll get a draft work program from FDOT, and that'll list all of the projects preceding these that will get funding. And these projects will be next year on the next tip document. So these will kind of lag behind the following transportation improvement program. So this upcoming year, we should see all of the backlog of projects that were kind of put on hold, or there was insufficient funding because we
Right.
kind of redirected some for the State Route 80 lighting program project. And so we'll see in a few months when I'll do a presentation on the work program, the draft work program, and that'll be in May. And you'll see all of those projects listed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We can move on to the next item, 2A. It's an action item. And it is the motion to recommend adoption of the 2022 legislative and policy positions. Andrew?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be going through the 2022 legislative and policy positions. This is an action item for you all today that will go to the board later this month. And this is the second time we've done legislative and policy positions. And going through these, really, they're geared towards accomplishing our mission and vision, a safe, efficient, and connected multimodal transportation system. So you'll see them organized in the different categories of the vision of safe, efficient, connected, and multimodal. And then as you look through these, And I know you all are involved also in your local governments. So if you have any additional items that you think should be considered when it comes to these, we can enhance our vision. You can always follow up with me afterwards and provide, if your local municipalities or jurisdictions pass their own policies and positions, I'd love to see those as well and gather those as well. So going through these, again, our mission to collaborate, plan, prioritize, and fund the transportation system, and moving towards a safe, efficient, connected, multimodal transportation system. And why do we do these legislative and policy positions, adopt these? So one is to grow local consensus on a future mobility vision. So how are we going to balance projects and land use development patterns? And then considering timely support of additional revenue sources. Second is to advance not only the TPA vision, but the Southeast Florida vision with our partners Miami-Dade and Broward in the state legislature. And then also influencing that same vision towards federal transportation funding and policies. So recently there's been the new $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that was passed. And that includes over $550 billion in new spending over the previous bill. And the TPA actually put on a workshop webinar yesterday with one of our consultants who went through all the new grants. And so that's gonna be available online if you wanna, if you didn't have a chance to look at it, that's gonna be available on our website if you wanna learn more about some of the highlights of the bill. So this policy document that has 11 statements is really a culmination of multiple documents that are adopted by the TPA and then also our partners. This includes our 2045 long range transportation plan, our Vision Zero action plan that was updated this past year, the legislative priorities and policy positions from our Metropolitan Plan Organization Advisory Council, which is all the MPOs made up in the state, and then the Southeast Florida Regional Transportation Plan for 2045, which is again Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach. So I'm going to go through each one of these statements at a high level. The first is safe. And the first ones deal with changes to state or federal law when it comes to expanding the distracted driving law, obeying crossing guards, automated speed enforcement, requiring helmets for bicyclists and also motorcyclists, and then including safety technology on new vehicles. The next is enhancing education when it comes to annual safe walk and bike curriculum and driver's education in the high schools. Also to pass tests of pedestrian, bicycle, motorcycle laws to obtain for a new driver's license. And lastly, enhancing education when it comes to roadway safety for info distributed to rental car companies. So when you go to a rental car place and renting from out of state, you have an understanding of laws in Florida. And lastly, for safe is revising roadway design standards when it comes to how we design our roadways, basing it more on context classification of the surrounding development, using target speed and not just existing speed when it comes to setting speeds for the roadway, and then allowing more flexibility for the installation of safe pedestrian crossing treatments at mid-block and unsignalized locations. And really, there's two main manuals when it comes to how we design our roadways. One's on the state roadway system, and the Florida Design Manual's been updated recently, and you're seeing a lot of progress on this one when it comes to context classification and setting target speeds. And really, there's a lot of other updates we can make at the federal level when it comes to the design manual there and how it applies to local roadways. Next is efficient, advanced autonomous, connected, and electric vehicles and infrastructure funding, and then allowing MPOs funding flexibility to maximize efficient delivery of transportation products on local facilities. And in the actual backup, you'll see more specifics on this one. So when we talk about funding flexibility, one of the mechanisms out there that can sort of streamline the product delivery is a funding swap between federal and state funds. So there's more of a process to go through when you have when you federalize a process or federalize a project. And so some states actually do a funding swap where they'll swap with their MPOs, the federal funds that the MPO receives with state funding. So it's less restrictions on administering some of these projects. And then the state uses that money towards their federal projects. Next is connected, promote complementary land use patterns and around existing and future high capacity transit routes. And then using existing maintenance funding, but also pursuing additional funding to reconstruct roadways with pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities. In the last category, multimodal, it's to advance a regionally connected, high capacity and efficient transit system to support anticipated growth and mobility, and then increase flexibility within existing state transportation programs to allow the funding of high capacity transit investments and support infrastructure. And on the right, you'll see an example of what high capacity looks like. These last multimodal ones are coming from our Southeast Florida Regional Transportation Plan. And when it comes to high capacity transit, what we're looking at is those types of facilities that are more premium. So bus rapid transit facilities, light rail, either in current mixed traffic or in their own dedicated lanes. And the last two allow flexibility within the strategic intermodal system, the SIS network, funds for facilities not designated on the SIS if the improvement will enhance mobility or freight on the SIS. And on the right, I know it's a hard map to read. You don't really need to read it. I just want to throw it up there, what the strategic intermodal system encompasses. So it's all of our major ports, airports, rail lines, and the major spine of our roadway system. And so what this one is allowing more flexibility with where those state funds can be utilized, not just on the strategic intermodal system, but also off that system if it still helps accomplish the goals of SIS. And the last one is to seek additional funding sources at all levels to build, operate, and maintain high capacity transit. And again, this is one of those ones that came out of the regional visioning. So next steps, so what do we really do with these legislative and policy positions? Really, we would collaborate with our partners on unified priorities. So as I mentioned, we work with our Southeast partners, Miami-Dade and Broward. We also work with the Metropolitan Planning Council Advisory Committee, which is our statewide group of MPOs that also passes legislative and policy positions. And on that, we have a liaison who oversees that committee. And they also have, they're housed within FDOT and they have direct access to legislature and other parts of the state. So they push on those policies. And then secondly, we can be proactive in providing feedback for federal government and state update on policies. So it comes to the state's transportation plan, any other federal documents that get revised. And lastly is educating community and elected officials. So again, that's all I have for you. And again, this is an action and we'd love your feedback.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Mark?
Yeah, I guess my question is kind of a practical one. When you set out these legislative and policy positions, how do you get that out to the entities within the county that you're working with, to the other MPOs, and most importantly, to the lobbyists that work for those folks, so that everyone who is walking around Tallahassee that has an interest in this actually has them in their hand? I mean, if it's, you know, how do you get that word out and who do you get it to?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'm practically how we've done in the past and sort of moving forward here. A few mechanisms. We have one federal lobbyist firm that we have, Holland and Knight, we have run a contract with. They're the ones who put on the webinar yesterday for us, and they keep this updated. So when it comes to, they're more for federal policy. So if we have something, we haven't done too much work with them on direct lobbying or anything like that, or education towards officials, but we have that avenue if it's a federal legislation. And then at the state level, we really work through our state group, the MPOAC, and the person who oversees that is a full-time position. It's paid for by the MPOs, but it's housed within FDOT, and they have more direct communication with the state when it comes to those things. On top of that, our staff, it's really piecemeal when it comes to different organizations we're involved in different committees. And when we have the opportunities to provide our feedback on certain types of policy documents or updates they're making both on federal and state level that our staff is involved in, they're pushing them from those angles. For example, I'm involved in one of the state safety committees on bike ped safety. And so Alyssa Frank, who's on that, they do have some like policy considerations they push as well at the state level. Another example is I think Gwen has served on the national board for the updates to the design manuals for roadways, right? The MUTCD. So different avenues. We don't have like a formal position at the TPA that handles that though. Some MPOs do, but we don't have a formal one.
Michael Fitzpatrick, please.
I have questions on three, different ones. 1B, allow automated speed enforcement / citations. What's this and how is it actually supposed to work?
Yep. And just to preface this, all of these are pretty high level, so we don't have like direct implementation strategies for those. But for this one specifically, allow automated speed enforcement and citations. You all are probably very familiar with red light cameras. What this is probably more geared towards is when it comes to speeding on roadways. There's a citation referencing footnotes, and you'll see the back page. It goes to a few of them being safety countermeasures. And one of the ones that are known to be an effective countermeasure for speeding are automated speed enforcement signs. So feedback signs where it actually will provide a citation to you if you're speeding over the speed limit. They are proven to be very effective, whether they're politically viable in communities, that's something that's still pushed forward, but that's something that's sort of the direction of this with automated speed enforcement. So it'd be those feedback signs, but not only feedback signs, but also ticketing if they are going over the speed limit.
Right. To me, that feels a little bit too much Big Brother-ish, but let's see. 1D, mandate adaptive cruise control, lane assistance, and collision avoidance systems on new vehicles. What exactly does adaptive cruise control mean and lane assistance?
That's another one that's going back. I'm not entirely familiar in depth about the technology and the advancements in it, unfortunately. So I can't provide you too much feedback today on that. But it's getting at just moving towards safer technology in vehicles and which one should be required in vehicles.
Okay. 4, provide funding for advanced autonomous, connected and electric vehicles and infrastructure. What's their definition of connected and autonomous for that matter?
Sure. I think it is the entire gambit of moving towards connected and autonomous vehicles at all levels.
I mean, autonomous and connected are kind of polar opposites, aren't they? So they're next to each other in the same sense. So how do they relate to each other?
Sure. Connected would be more towards connectivity with like existing infrastructure in the area, right? So it could be, for example, transit signal priority, freight signal priority, or prioritize in general, where the vehicles are talking to the infrastructure, whereas autonomous is more related to moving towards a vehicle that is not directly connected to that. A lot of places seem to distinguish between the both, this connected and autonomous.
Would connected include vehicles, moving vehicles, communicating to each other, adjusting speeds to each other?
Yes, it would be like the entire gamut of that. It's not really specified.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Ramona?
Thanks for the presentation. I wanted to just say I support the part that talks about education curriculum, especially for whether it's high school students or whatnot. I think that's a great idea, especially when it comes to safety and all the devices they're using and what next is coming, whether it's holographic stuff one day or whatever. So just keeping up to date with that. And I guess my only question had been on the rental car stuff. It was just like, it would be like an insert or something to kind of update them on what our laws are here and sort of like that type of deal. Thank you.
Yes, that's a good point. This is actually one that we added this year, was a request that we had about adding safety information distributed to rental car companies. So what we are pushing for that is yes, it'd be something that you would somehow alert people of the rules of the law at a rental car company when you're picking up from like out of state. So just the overall premise of this was to build awareness about local transportation laws when it comes to pedestrian, bicycles, and vehicles. Yep. And I do want to, you did mention, if I have a second here, sorry, talking on turn, but the other one you mentioned about pedestrian bicycle safety curriculum in elementary and middle schools as a requirement. That's a pretty tough one. You know, we've been working with the school district on that one to try to push that forward. It's been really difficult, but we still strive to provide that in a good format. Teachers only have so many hours in a day, and the curriculum is already pretty packed throughout the year. So we've been working continuously with the school district on how we could implement that, but it is something that's taken some time to try to push towards.
Thank you. James?
Yes, Andrew. Is there any projects or policies currently moving through the legislature that these will be kind of packaged with or attached to?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to dive into that as much. We get legislative updates from our consultant on the federal level, and then our MPOAC provides a legislative update on current bills passing through and how they're tackling their legislative policy positions, which are many of them, these are incorporated here, are in that as well. But I don't have a direct answer for you on that. Our staff isn't formally tracking its movement through the legislation.
All right, thank you. One thing I think maybe it should be on our radar is that FHWA is conducting a multi-year study right now on mitigating strategies on arterial speed management. And it's, you know, that's what we know, that's where most of the major crashes and severe crashes for pedestrian and bicyclists are happening. And of course, you know, one of the findings that is even in this recommendation is for mid-block crossing. And I think not so much as this big picture support of the legislative and policy positions, but I think maybe on from a citizen perspective and looking at our respective communities, we need to support mid-block crossings on arterial networks that not only, and I know FDOT and the county likes to install RRFBs, but we need to look at controlled beacons such as the Hawk to yield the result that we, I think it'll benefit. Are there any comments virtually? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but you.
Oh, I apologize.
I sort of share Mike's skepticism on point 4, provide funding to advance autonomous. I assume autonomous means self-driving cars, essentially, right?
Correct.
And I note that it cites over to footnote 10, which is a 2017 National Highway Traffic Safety Administration publication. So it's 5 years old. If you follow what Tesla's doing with respect to their autonomous vehicles, I mean, my view is it's a big scam. I don't think we're going to see autonomous driving vehicles for a long time. Tesla, you know, charges another $5,000 or $10,000 per car to get, you know, autonomous driving. And I don't see why we should help Tesla scam his prospective purchasers with it, because it doesn't work. And I don't think it's going to work for another 10 or 15 years, if it ever works, because of the complexities involved in mimicking human drivers with a computer. And you can read almost monthly, if not weekly, about automobile accidents caused by autonomous driving vehicles that don't recognize that there's somebody standing in the middle of the road and they hit them, or there's a vehicle in the middle of the road and they hit them. So I'm not sure we ought to be recommending that we spend tax dollars to advance autonomous driving when essentially what that does is help subsidize people like Tesla and their attempt to essentially take money for systems in their cars that don't work, and they're not anticipated to work for another 10 years. You always read 6 months away, 1 year away from actually doing autonomous vehicles if you read any of the Tesla stuff. So I'm not in favor of providing funding to advance autonomous infrastructure.
Thank you. One of the changes that's coming, and as far as like in the MUTCD itself, is chapter 5. There is a new chapter for AVs, and it has a lot to do with the type of pavement markings that's being installed on our streets and our highway, so that autonomous vehicles could detect and stay within its bounded lanes. Obviously, the support of this policy and position is very broad. I don't think staff has the details to provide us with which aspect of AVs, but I do think that because from a federal perspective, it's already making its transition into the law. And the way that it works is like all of our signs and all of our pavement markings that you see in our streets, there's layers to it, right? So FHWA puts it, takes it to the NCUTCD, it gets approved, it gets adopted in the manual itself. The state has a few years, 2-3 years to adopt it in that level. And then the county and the local also adopts it. So as practitioners like myself, we are bound by those rules, and those rules are already making its way into the standards. So I just want, everybody to be aware that it is coming. Whether we think it's going to be soon or 10, 20 years from now, it is going to transition into the way that we see the built environment.
Well, assuming it's coming, it's not going to be coming for several years. I don't see why we should be wasting money on it now until it is in fact a viable alternative. And I don't see why we should be recommending that we waste taxpayer dollar on advanced autonomous infrastructure at this point in time until we know it's a viable mechanism to drive vehicles.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Paula.
Thank you. Do we know how these legislative priorities came to be? And if we're working with multiple other MPOs and whatnot throughout our area, I assume this is just for the federal level of legislative updates, or are you looking at, state legislative updates?
Correct. It should be federal and state. And it's a culmination of various policy positions that sort of came together from different documents.
So the state legislature is out of session shortly, I think another week. So will we get an update to see kind of what may have come through related to this? And we can get a sense of kind of the details of some of these recommendations. And I know that this is a high level policy legislative update, and it isn't any of the, like, let's go out and, advocate for markings for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
But the point is that we are a planning agency and we have to continue to plan for whatever the future is. So if there is a industry and a government that's focused on autonomous vehicles, I guess we better be ready for that. And I guess that's what I want to see, is how well we're doing in that regard. And if we really are spending money to do stuff that will get us there or not. Is that possible? Can we get?
Yes,
something?
yes. And then you brought up a very good point, because, as we were putting this in the packet, I was thinking through, like, a lot of these are making some progress. And that's not something that you're seeing here, and you're not seeing the status of how these are really doing. And there's a lot more nuances to them all, of course, with the discussion we're seeing here. So we can provide that in the future and hopefully get this thing, a lot of places already passed their policy positions earlier on, near the end of the year. Sometimes they'll do it. So hoping to get to you all earlier next year with also a better status update. That's a good point. Yes.
Thank you. James, do you have another comment? Your card is up, so
And
Michael Fitzpatrick.
Just to clarify, I'm not opposed to driverless cars and fairly soon. I didn't understand that autonomous meant driverless. That's all. And how could it be autonomous and still be connected? That was what I was concerned. But I think there is a place, particularly on interstates, for vehicles that are interacting with each other and overriding slow human responses in certain situations.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments virtually?
No.
Okay. Can we get a motion for
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, can we have a roll call, Margie, or can we do,
You can just do a verbal vote.
okay, verbal? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed?
Aye.
Nay?
No.
To
Okay.
confirm, I have James Bonfiglio, Richard Vazzalotti, and then Albert. Did I hear you say no?
Michael
Oh, was you Michael
Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick? I'm sorry. So I have the three, Michael Fitzpatrick, James Bonfiglio, and Richard Vazzalotti.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. We have an information item, draft fiscal year 23 to 24 Unified Planning Work Program. Matthew?
Good morning, ladies. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll be discussing, our document has a lot of acronyms. I'll just say that now. But the Unified Planning Work Program, we call it the UPWP, is our friendly document. This is for the term of fiscal years 23 and 24. And to give a little bit more background on what this document is, it's our 2-year operational plan and budget. So it will begin in July of this year and extend through June 30th of 2024. It also constitutes our application for federal grants. We are funded by the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged here in the state of Florida, as well as some local fees by our local municipalities. And within this document, we identify what we're going to do. We call off deliverables that we're going to accomplish. Who would do those, whether it would be staff, consultants, or usually a combination of the two, when we target completion of those deliverables and how much that will cost. In addition, we identify the funding source for those projects. A little more in depth, our core tasks and what we're focused on here at the TPA. First, engage the public. And part of what's happening today and why we bring this to you is we seek public's input and that of our committees. Task 2, plan the system in the short range. That's more of a 5-year time frame. Plan the system long range. That's our long range transportation plan. That's more in the 25-year range. And then prioritize funding, implement projects, collaborate with our partners, and administer the agency. A change that we are experiencing in this funding cycle. Again, this UPWP or budget plan comes up every 2 years. And what's different this time around is we're consolidating funding sources. We work through the Federal Highway Administration. One of them we call PL. That's our planning funds to be an MPO. And then again, Federal Highway Administration, we call them SU. They come from surface transportation block grants that we can use for planning purposes. And then from the FTA or Federal Transit Administration, again, for MPO planning funds. These have been 3 separate funds that we've monitored and we track internally. The state of Florida, working closely with FHWA and FTA, have been able to consolidate this or combine it into the Consolidated Planning Grant, the CPG. Again, I know there's a lot of acronyms. It's the world we live in. We try to minimize them, but in this document, there are quite a number. And we're happy to clarify anytime it's needed. So that is the change. We're moving to this CPG grant procedure. To give a better feel for our funding sources and where these funds are coming from, again, Federal Highway constitutes both PL and SU. That's the bulk of our funding. And then FTA is also funding that metropolitan planning process that we provide. And then CTD's Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged. And then lastly are the local funds provided by our local municipalities. I am going to back up one slide. Our overall budget in fiscal 23 is 4.9 million. And then in 24 is 4.78 million. We do operate we have allocated funding, so we build our expenses against that funding to provide the best outcome and really achieve the vision that we have at the agency. I will identify just the separation of grant-funded activities, which are restricted by federal statute, and then the locally funded expenditures that we use to really maximize the impact of the TPA with the community and outreach and making sure we have the best environment to operate. And again, our fiscal 23, matching our revenues, our expenses are 4.9 in fiscal 23 and 4.78 in fiscal 24. One last addition in fiscal 23, there will be some new requirements with our contracts and grants, and we are seeking to add one additional full-time position who will aid in that process. Lastly, this is our time frame of this procedure. We come today. This is the initial notification where we're seeking input. Any additional information you have on more projects we can do. This will also go to our board on the 17th. It'll go to FDOT in April, and then in May, it will come back to our board for final approval and adoption, and then will be transmitted to FDOT, FHWA, and FTA so that it's an effective document and our budget is operational on July 1st. And then today this serves as a public notice and that we're seeking ideas for additional studies, plans, so that we can really provide a safe, efficient, connected multimodal system for the residents of Palm Beach County.
Okay, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, we're gonna go around the room. Actually, I'm gonna go this way this time because I went to the left. So Paula Ryan first. Oh, I'm sorry, Ramona.
Thank you again for presenting this. I just actually had a question for public comment. I understand it would be okay for us to share this with others, and how would they go on the website, or would we provided a link for public comment, or?
They can reach out to us. As far as a link online, we haven't posted it with a link, but we can do that. So I appreciate that comment. We can do that.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking that would be easier to share with folks in Palm Beach County to be, whoever would take the time to look at it and give some ideas. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Paula Ryan, please.
Thank you. I wanted to address the Executive Order 14008, which requires 40% of the overall benefits of federal investment into disadvantaged communities, including efforts to address climate change crisis in this, country. So I was just curious as to how that's going to be addressed and what your plans are for looking to identify some of the problems in these communities and how we can put some work program together that would help in those areas. Do you have any examples?
I would take that as input for now. The larger scale of our UPWP is to establish several of the studies and projects that we'll do over the course of the next 2 years. And that may be that's a component of those studies that we look at. But we'll make note to ensure that we do that.
Thank you for the comment. And we're following closely the regulations from the feds and the guidance that they're providing. One of the ways we would like to address those climate and equity is through the scoring and prioritization of our projects that we fund. So every year we bring to you, to the committees and to our board, our objective scoring system and how we're going to be funding grants that we get applications on. And so that's where we're trying to incorporate some of this resiliency, equity, traditionally underserved communities. So if it is a project that is helping with that or is in one of those communities, it gets more points. It is prioritized higher over other projects. And again, as Matthew mentioned, in our UPWP, it's how we're going to be operating over the next 2 years and what actions in general we want to be doing. But one of those is assisting local communities with plans and studies. So if there are transportation related plans, mobility, complete streets, resiliency, all of these, we can help be a funding partners for those studies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Michael Fitzpatrick and then Mark Bruner.
In the budget pies, I was trying to figure out, I asked the TPA, how much is gas tax money comes into Palm Beach County? And because I want to figure out how many gallons of gas are burned, but they didn't really have that. In your pie chart, where is the gas tax money? And is there any way of figuring out how many gallons of gas are sold in Palm Beach County?
I think strictly from my experience, the gas tax typically come directly to cities and counties that funds roadway infrastructure. There's a very specific.
Yeah, so where is it in the pie charts?
So we'll bring the presentation up in just a moment. In short, it's not a direct correlation. The gas taxes that are collected here at the pump in Palm Beach County and then are aggregated at the federal level, they come back to the state and then they're redistributed by formula back to the different MPOs around the state and the different regions by population and by the other elements of that formula. So I don't have the exact details of how that would.
So
do that
I'm
answer.
hearing that this is another way Palm Beach County gets milled for taxes to pay other parts of the state.
I wouldn't have the details to say that.
So, okay, but how would you find out how many gallons of gas are sold in Palm Beach County?
This is Andrew. Your specific question would be, we can get the data for, I think it's through the Department of Revenue, based on the county level of like tax collected. So we can get that number of gas tax revenue. But Matthew's correct when it comes to, and we can probably get that breakdown for federal, state, and local. But when it gets into this plan, it's really, like Matthew said, there's gas taxes, predominantly gas taxes through most of these funding codes. So FHWA planning funds, the surface transportation funds from FHWA, FTA funds, all those have gas taxes in them, and they're all federal. And then I'm not sure if I see anyone from the state there, but the state has a match as well that also
So
is from
it's-
gas taxes.
It's
But
buried in each one of those subcategories somewhere.
yeah, but yep, it is, and it's mostly going to be federal, making up the share of this budget. But we can get you the specific links and information on total collections for the county. But if you're talking about the whole conversation when it comes to, are we donor locations to other places in the state or vice versa to the country as a whole? Typically, Florida is a donor state when it comes to overall. I don't know right now. I can't tell you about county to county, but
I was surprised when I didn't realize, I thought we were getting it all back, and I see we're getting a fraction unknown size back.
mhm.
So we don't know how much we're paying out and how much we're getting back.
You wouldn't see it in here now. And we won't have the numbers on you at this moment, but we can probably get that to you.
Can I just add something? It does appear on your county's budget. Okay, when they do their budget every year, they identify funds that come from other locations of their revenue sources, of which this is one of them. And that is how you're able to see, I don't know how you know what we've spent. That's probably Department of Revenue and who monitors the gas pumps, but your county and out the state, it will appear in the budget, how much of that is being come to them and being used.
There's more than 1 million cars registered in Palm Beach County, and each of them burns like 423 average gallons per year. That's a lot of money. How much of that money is coming back to Palm Beach County? I'm wondering now. And I'm wondering how you could find that out. I'm skeptical we're getting our fair share.
Thank you. For the record, I drive an electric vehicle. So I would not know how much gas is today. So Mark. Mark, if you don't mind, turn your.
Turned
yeah.
it off. Wrong way. Yeah, I don't, it's going to be very hard to track that down. I guess my question was, and I think it's actually the next slide that you had, which was your expenditures. I was just curious, consultant services and transfers to other agencies. And I guess my only question is, what other agencies would you be transferring money to?
Sure. And we do try to abbreviate this for time and everyone's interest.
Again, it's
Other-
a high level view. I
Sure.
realize.
The transfers to other agencies consist of FDOT District 4 down here in South Florida, as well as the Broward and Miami-Dade MPO and TPO as we work together on several projects. That constitutes the transfers to other agencies. I would like to clarify one additional thing. We do have an exceptional staff who have established that link online for making those public comments. That was already done. So thank you for that.
All right. Thank you so much. Are there any other virtual comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much. Administrative items. Are there any staff presentation on this?
No, they're all informational.
Okay, perfect. So our next meeting is scheduled for April 6th at this time. Our committee meeting is adjourned. Have a good day, everybody.